So, still no haircut. I washed it today. You can probably tell, maybe. My hair stands a solid inch off my scalp before it bends. And then it curls really, really harsh. You can't see it now because I use a straightener. I use a straightener way too much. But still need to get this cut. See, like that. That. Without these things. Anyway, if you watch the news, if you've been on my Facebook for a while, one of the things I've been saying is we've been here before. This has been predicted. Any science fiction writer out there should not be surprised at the current state of the world. Shouldn't. I remember in the mid-80s, what was the organization? World Watch? Some environmental organization posted a review of science, not a report, a review. They took a whole bunch of different reports and said that we were 30 years from the point of no return on pollution, plastics, chemicals in the atmosphere, the ozone layer, which they were, I don't know if they were wrong on that or not. Climate change. Discover magazine in the mid-80s published a huge scientific study on the threat of reglaciation. How the climate gets warmer and warmer and warmer and it flips the circuit, and then we have glaciers, and glaciers happen very, very quickly. It's all been known my entire life. I grew up with every adult I knew smoking and making jokes that smoking causes cancer. I've spent my entire life listening to body talc can cause ovarian cancer because it has asbestos, and only this last month Johnson & Johnson admitted that, well, yeah, there might be some asbestos in some of their products. It's all known. One of the things, being a science fiction writer, having been a member of the Futurist Society, having worked on a couple of Ghost Rider, never mind. You see trends, you see patterns, you see things coming. So when I started this, I said if I had so many subscribers, I would read a story, and I'd read this story and that story, and I've decided to change that a little bit because I'm going to read a story, which has to do with what I just said. Looking forward, seeing patterns. One day the Earth will be at war with the Moon. One day the Earth will be at war with Mars. If we succeed in getting off the planet, we may not at this rate, but I used to have a t-shirt that said, I side with Mars, and I'd have people stop and say, what the hell does that mean? I was like, well, one of these days we're going to go to war with Mars, and I'm on the Mars side. And they just shake their head and go whatever and wander off. So the story is called Empty Echoes. It's one of 10 flash fictions that I wrote for a market that only accepted 2. And change of management, change of needs, I don't know what went down. We were in the process of moving to Hawaii, and then I was sick, and I didn't have the emotional energy to pursue why they didn't want the other 8. Maybe they didn't like them. Who knows? Anyway, it is the whole premise of the I have my obligations book. And in my obligations book, humans are still on Earth, except for the ones that are in the stars, which is, you'd have to read the book to understand. And then I have the Ones series, The Quiet Ones is the first one released. There's a bunch of them already outlined, a couple of them half written. I've got probably 75,000 words written on 2 other books. In the middle of that is the period of explosive growth where we go into space. And years ago, it's been mid-90s, the husband and I worked on what was going to be a comic book about American jobs in space. And there was Joe the taxi cab driver, and Jamal the short order chef. And it was just basically that if Americans get into space, we're going to be second-class citizens because we aren't pursuing... Hold on, because we weren't pursuing space. And now we are, privately, but we are. So the premise of these stories, when I first started thinking of them 20 years ago, was we all can't be heroes. We all can't be the captains. We all can't be the pilots. For every pilot, there's 100 to 200 support personnel. For every infantryman, there's 1,000 people behind him. So this is the smaller stories. This is the small people in it. Anyway, this one's called Empty Echoes. The stars didn't spin so much as they trembled with a tight rotation, a circular wobble Trey had to look for. She lay, suit pressed tight to the pocketed tiles, and waited. Watched the stars from the raised center nose point of the fat ship's rotating sensor pod. Anchored 3 ways, as if safety mattered. She had bypassed every protocol and every redundant system to get there. Had taken the week since Jerry died to rewire the alarms. The months since he started dying to convince the computer to trust her. And the last year of the trip, asking her teammates to let her die so that Jerry could live. They refused. Never even took a vote. She was critical to the mission, the life support specialist. Jerry was just a +1, a political add-on to the crew, there as a journalist, and now dead. An accidental exposure to a cleaning chemical killed his liver and kidneys a year before it killed his body. A political accident. It was supposed to kill them all. Only Jerry got in the way, saved them all. And they wouldn't let her volunteer for the organ swap, even when she was willing. Wouldn't let her die for him, even when she was willing to die for them. So she waited, watched, bypassed systems one at a time until now, spinning so fast that the stars just trembled and her feet felt like giant water balloons in her pressure suit while she waited. The clock said 18 minutes. She needed 20 to be sure. No alarms had sounded, no crew voices in her headset to distract her. No orders. Empty. Her suit was low on oxy, and she struggled to shift her center of balance off of the nose. Pulled herself until the spin pushed her. Moved toward the open airlock and the empty, airless ship she had left behind. It had taken her a month and a week to do it right this time. There would be no walking reminders to show her her failure. Just cold, uncaring crew members frozen in their bunks and at their stations. Unseeing, unhearing witnesses to the Free Mars hijacking of the ship as she completed her mission. Mars 7 colony was underground, built against the mined-out ridgeline, and into the hard rock caverns that were all that remained of the Fujian Corporation's rape of the planet for resources. The colony was dying, had been dying her entire life, was never meant to live. Cast-offs and purchased political prisoners left to fend for themselves when the corporations turned Mars proper over to the United Nations and gave Earth's governments their mess to clean up. And 800,000 people stranded with minimal food production and less market-worthy minerals to sell for supplies. The corporations pulled out overnight in protest of changing environmental laws, and the militaries on and above the planet divided things into 12 colonies. Mars 7, under French-Canadian stewardship, was not the largest, did not suffer the way some had, but Trey still had nightmare memories of listening to the radio, lights at -3 to minimum, voices in the dark calling out for food, fuel, help, calling out deaths, threats, prayers. The roll call twice a day that counted down the planet's population from 800,000 to 120,000 in the 4 months it took Earth to send the first wave of supplies, along with listening to the static-filled news broadcasts that spoke of weather and wars and politicians admitting that the corporations did nothing wrong, called it legal, would not be held to harm, that children died because their parents signed contracts. Trey reset the main computer autopilot on the docking sequence again and checked her math. She imagined Paul Xavier standing at the top of a ridgeline watching her ship leave Mars with a light load of trinkets, jewelry, and media files to be sold at the Antares market to rich Japanese tourists. The pollution Fujian had tried to claim was good for terraforming dimmed her view of him. Paul had applied to join the ship, had been accepted, had been bumped at the last minute by a politician's pet reporter. The plan had been to hijack the ship just after takeoff. Paul, a pilot, would reprogram the system and they would land at a secret place in the ridges, hide the ship, strip it, sell its parts, and keep the fusion reactor to power the colony as it struggled for independence from the oppression of its Earth-based masters. But the reporter got a face full of Chlorozam, and Trey had to wait. Didn't have a second anti-personnel device. Had second thoughts. Now, with the ship trying to prepare its docking sequence with Antares Station, the jewel of the Fujian Corporation, Trey realized that this is what she was meant to do all along. She muted the voices of the station calling off her fast approach, demanding identification, threatening. "The blood of Mars is on Fujian hands," Trey said in a book-learned Japanese, enunciating each word into the microphone as the ship pushed into the docking bay of the large station before cycling to begin its launch sequence, and then exploded. The fusion reaction bloomed to envelop the spiral arm of the station. "Any contact?" Lieutenant General Amir asked, again, as he watched the fireball eat the evacuated old station. "Negative. Derelict ship failed every contact." "Shame. Saved Fujian a fortune in deconstruction and demolition costs." "Yes, sir." That's the story. Wrote it in Tacoma, so a couple years ago. Even more appropriate right now. Your call. Let me know. Talk to you later. Bye.